Hey guys, in this lesson I want to talk about product inspections. What I'm talking about here is hiring someone to go to your factory, inspect your goods for you, either while they're being produced or before they're being shipped to you. I didn't do any product inspections for the first 2 or 3 years of selling on Amazon, and like most people, you kind of learn the hard way that it's probably worth it. Without hiring someone and paying someone to do a product inspection, you can do what I like to call a poor man's inspection. And what I'm talking about here is asking the sales rep or asking the factory to take a whole bunch of photos of the goods during the process and send them to you. This lets you spot major issues quicker. For example, if you were supposed to get something manufactured in orange and you start seeing red ones come off the line, it's like, whoa, wait a second, where'd those red ones come from? Of course, with the sales rep taking these pictures, they're only gonna take pictures of the ones that are looking nice. This can help maybe spot serious defects, but if you really want to make sure that the goods that you bought and invested in are of high quality, I recommend hiring someone to do a proper product inspection. These typically cost around $250. When you build this into the product cost, if you're ordering a lot of goods or your goods are higher cost, it's usually a very small amount. If your first order is, let's say, like $1,000, then $250 extra that increases your cost by 25%. In that case, it's like all of a sudden it is a lot more expensive. So I'd say, like, for you guys out there, just weigh like the risk versus reward. The two types of inspections that are most common are called a DURPRO or a pre-shipment. DURPRO stands for during production. Pre-shipment, as it sounds, after the goods are complete, before they're shipped, all the goods are inspected at the warehouse. Benefit of the DURPRO is you can catch issues earlier on. When you catch issues earlier on, the factory is more willing to work with you to correct these issues. Whereas if they're already finished with all of the goods and they're just being waiting to be shipped out, usually turns into a little bit more of an argument or a battle with the factory to get this stuff fixed. But you also know exactly what you're getting because all the goods have been completed. Really expensive goods or companies with a very, very high level of quality control, what they'll typically do is a DURPRO inspection as well as a pre-shipment inspection. But again, if you're purchasing goods at like, a lower cost, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, as you can imagine, all of a sudden that starts to add up to have multiple inspections done. What happens when you hire one of these companies is they'll send someone out to the factory, they'll take a random sample of the goods, and they'll check it for a whole bunch of stuff. So like appearance, color, style, if it's a fabric, they'll see if the dye bleeds. If it's metal, they'll see how easily it bends. All different types of tests depending on the type of goods. They'll check your packaging, they'll make sure your FNSKU scans, they'll make sure your shipping labels are on there. I've typically been using this company called Kima. The other one that's quite popular is called VTrust. I haven't personally used them, but a lot of friends of mine have, and I think they're actually a little bit cheaper. Just for me, all my stuff is already in Kima and it works well. So let me show you an example of these. What happens is, I pay for the inspection. I can book it through here. Select the supplier, what date I want the inspection, more information about it. They're gonna ask for a reference sample, and this is what they're going to gauge the rest of the goods based off of. Usually I don't have a reference sample and I just ask them to do it anyway. In a perfect world, you would give them a reference sample. You can attach images of your goods, of your packaging, whatever else you want, and they'll check against that. After that, what happens is they will shoot you an email after it's been completed, and then you have all your reports in here. What happens is you can actually see that almost all of my inspections failed except for one. And let me show you what the actual inspection report is and why they've failed. So this is what an inspection report looks like. It's actually quite long. They show all your information. This is the inspector that showed up at the factory. They give you lots of comments and stuff in here. Blah, 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 all the things they're testing for. They take a whole bunch of pictures with little, measuring to show you how big it is. This is my FNSKU and my box labels. What else we got in here? Blah, 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 blah. Pictures of the packaging. If the box, this is like a drop test from a certain height. This is like the acceptable limit or whatever to make sure that you can drop it and then open it up and the goods aren't damaged. Even moisture content. So they check for all kinds of things that you wouldn't even think to check for. And typically what you can do is you can just ask them, like, what do you normally inspect for this type of product? And then you can go through here and it shows you what's wrong. They show how many units had a critical defect, had a major defect, or had a minor defect. AQL is like a acceptable quality limit. I think that's what it stands for. These are the limits that they've set. Out of 50 units, which I think for this order was 10%, we're gonna allow 5 minor defects, 3 major defects, and there can't be any critical. So there weren't any critical. There were 2 out of 3 major, so that's fine. But there were 7 minor defects, and they said we're only allowing 5 minor defects. So 7 times the product contained scratches only visible less than 1 meter away. And then twice there was a missing screw or the threads were damaged. So there was like little scratches right here, and I guess they found those 7 times. Oh yeah, like right there, the screws weren't all the way in. Oh man, that's actually a bad one. What happens when you get these back? Like I showed you, the majority of my inspections failed. But like, as you can see, are these goods still sellable? Yeah, you might get a bad review, or someone might ask for a refund or a partial refund if they received one of those units that were damaged. Would it be the end of the world? No, not really. The next steps are, if you remember back to the agreement we entered in with the factory, there was an area in there that said if you fail the inspection, you need to correct the goods and then you have to pay for a second inspection. Usually the factory kind of gives you some crap about this. At that point, you can kind of decide whether or not you like really want to stand firm and push back on that, or if you would rather just say like, all right, like I kind of trust you this time. I would recommend sticking to it and say like, no, like we had a deal. And the reason I like doing that is it shows them that you're not willing to have any quality issues. And I think as a result, the next time they manufacture a production run of these goods, that there'll probably be a little bit higher attention to detail because they know that you're kind of tough as far as the quality standards go. Alternatively, in the past, they've given me a discount. So that's another option, and you can just work with your factory to decide what the best thing to do is there. The other good thing about hiring inspection companies is they can help you around any laws that are required for importing your goods into the country. So example of this is if you're selling goods that come into contact with food, there's special laws, or you have to do special tests to make sure that it doesn't leach chemicals into the food. There's other standards around children's clothing that it doesn't catch on fire. The inspection companies will tell you if any of these are required for importing your goods. They'll also be able to do those tests for you that you can then give to customs when your goods are being imported. To summarize all that, if you're spending quite a bit of money on your goods, I would recommend you just get an inspection. It gives you the peace of mind. It's a little bit of an insurance policy, especially for the first shipment. Don't panic if it does fail. Like I showed you, most of mine fail, and you can work with the factory to have those items corrected. Per your contract, you can also have them pay for the second inspection. If your goods are fairly inexpensive, let's say, like $1,000, then maybe it's not worth it. That's kind of up to you whether or not you want to do it. And then I'd recommend for everyone to do my poor man's inspection, where you just ask the factory to take photos throughout the process and send them to you. So that's about all there is to it. Thanks, guys.